Yes, you are now listening to the sound. Sports Reports is ordered. Preview season continues. Tonight we're going to get a little bigger. We're going to take it to the Big Ten. Can James Franklin get it done? Tonight, Michigan in trouble with the NCAA. What do you think? Too harsh? Too light? We'll talk about it. I got with me the world famous, the world renowned, born in Texas, raised in Virginia, representing New Jerusalem. He just wants you to know, state's all right, but they're not real. He is Mr. Logic. Don't bring feelings to a fact.
Don't do it.
Then, of course, it is I, down here in the Alamo, your resident fourth unorthodox statistician. That's so much you thought I was southpaw. You better watch out, Canelo. Hands coming for you. I am Tupac. Do me a favor out there, y'all. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate. Do all the free things. Do all the good things. Have you a liquid death while you at it? Let's get it. So, Mr. Logical.
Let's listen.
You ready?
It's good.
You ready?
I'm listening.
I was having fun with this. Here we go. So, the Wolverines, we finally have resolution in this Connor Stallions situation. Sign, stealing, plotting with teams. I mean, yeah, Michigan could still appeal, I suppose. So there's been a rash of penalties handed down. So, I don't know if I got all of them because it was a lot, but I'm going to just go down what I got here. So Jim Harbaugh with a 10-year show cause, Connor Stallions with an 8-year, Sharon Moore with a 2-year, all right? 3-year show clause for Denard Robinson, a $50,000 fine, plus 10% of the budget for the football program. They can't get any money from the postseason this year or next, and 10% of their scholarship budget for the next 2 years. So, Mr. Logical, too much, too little.
It seems like it's gone on too long, considering that I thought the issue was if you can't protect your signs, it's not the other team's fault. I know they went to extremes to make it happen, and they've already had the Netflix documentary. I just felt like they should have been already wrapped up with this. It does feel a lot like they let it play out so Michigan could be successful because these things happened before the national championship. It was going on before then. So I think they felt like Michigan was on a heater. Harbaugh had figured out the recruiting. He had figured out how to turn Michigan into a winner, which is good for college football, a lot like the narrative that the Knicks being great is good for the NBA and Dallas being good is good for the NFL. Michigan, one of these blue blood schools, being good because this stuff was happening when they were winning. Most times when people are winning, let's keep it a buck in college football. If you turn it around, if you go from 7-5 to 12-0, or you had some years of 5-7 and some 6-6 and some 8-4s and some 8-5s if you played the bowl game, and all of a sudden you got, you get one coach in and everything else just changes. All the same players. You go 12-0, 13-0, you dominate, you getting first round draft picks. Some infractions are probably being made. I thought they handled it back in the day, but the fact that they're still throwing the new coach under the bus for something that the old coach and people who don't work there, that seems a little odd to me. That the athletic director, did he get any fines? Did any of the equipment managers, like who else get fined? The guys who left Michigan to go to NFL with Jim Harbaugh, are they under some show cause, limitations? It just seems very funny, and it feels like there's some kind of handshake deal that was made. Like, listen, we got to give you something. Thanks for the ratings. Thanks for the boost. But we got to level something on you. But they've already capitalized so much off the money is probably irrelevant at this point. They probably charged so much more for tickets over the last few years being successful. They've been on TV a lot. the money they want from national championship games and bowl game appearances and all the money they got from Jordan, because I think they're a Jordan school. It's like that $20 million is dropping a bucket.
All right, so I got a couple things. As far as Sharon Moore goes, they have text chains on him, talking to Connor Stallions about certain things, so that's first and foremost. So he's not unjustly being punished per se. And I would say that he got off light because, first of all, Michigan decided, hey, we're going to give him 2 games, but we're going to pick the 2 games too. So it's not like, hey, you're suspended for the first 2 games of the season because game 2, they play his alma mater, Oklahoma. Can't suspend him for that. So you're suspended weeks 3 and 4 against Central Michigan and Nebraska. So that's first and foremost. So he didn't really get punished by the school.
But they did the same thing for Harbaugh. And he was the interim coach for those first 3 games.
But that's what I'm saying. So I don't see it as a punishment. And then, so a part of the punishment that the NCAA gave was that he gets suspended for a game next year, the first game of the season, which is against Western Michigan in Germany. I don't see that as a punishment. You don't want to be suspended. You don't want to be associated with the word suspended. But in the grand scheme, if you were on these text message chains and Connor Stallions did something that was so bad, you got off relatively light.
So what they're saying is that only 2 coaches were involved in these text message conversations. No one else is involved. An entire operation that's bringing in that much money, they leveled it on the shoulders of a dude who begged to be an assistant, another assistant coach, and the head coach. I mean, like, it's listen, don't piss my pocket and tell me it's raining. They could have literally just done this. I remember I deployed one time to Iraq, like 2009. They messed up the per diem for everybody that was there. We ended up getting like 4 or 5 times more per diem than you're supposed to. But it happened for everybody. Instead of going back and redoing every single person's travel voucher and getting the money back, they're like, you know what? That's messed up. It is what it is, but it's a waste of our time to go back and try to rectify this. It is what it is. We understand what's going forward. We're going to look out for these things. Michigan, you're on some kind of probation. Boom, 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 knock it out, because you're not really giving any punishment that's holding them back. You allowed them to continue playing when you knew all these allegations. Nothing's really holding them back.
That's where I kind of disagree.
Didn't lose any recruits?
Well, that's what I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. This is just 2-5's thought. This isn't something that was in the punishment. This is just me trying to think of the effects, because like we say, Michigan pisses money. You know what I mean? They got 115,000 seat stadium, charge $80 per ticket or something, right? You'd be all right. But the problem is, so this is my thought. So with them being ineligible to get the postseason money for those 2 years, we're looking at this transfer portal, right? So you got your boosters that are helping the collective out. But now the school is also on the hook for certain revenue sharing or whatever the case may be. So could that potentially hurt you being able to maximize your transfer portal for the next 2 years?
Going to the endowment. Every major university has a deep endowment. It's probably being traded on the New York Stock Exchange. There's plenty of money available. So if they need to get another 5-star quarterback or 5-star wide receiver, and they can't get it with the money, that they still can go to the bowl game, right? If they go to a bowl game,
yeah, they can go to the bowl. They just can't
go to the Big Ten championship. They just can't get the money. Well, they're gonna get the money from something. They're gonna sell a lot of hoodies. They're gonna sell a lot of tickets. They're gonna sell a lot of something. They're just not gonna get that money. So the money that they expect to get is still gonna be just enormous amount of money. So they won't get this extra 20. They're fine with that. If they need to get another $4 million to get the top defensive lineman from anywhere in the Midwest, from Ohio, Pennsylvania, wherever they got to get this guy to get him to Michigan, that money will find its way to someone's account, and they'll be fine.
But
Western Michigan, it might be a problem. But
it could also have an adverse effect on. It could also have an adverse effect on the rest of the programs, though. So, like, for example, we know football drives the bus. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the revenue sharing, I imagine, at most schools is going to be allocated to the football department. But you still got basketball teams. Michigan's a good basketball school. You still got other sports that you could potentially get NIL athletes from, that you might not be able to use the revenue sharing to get.
You might,
so
like I said,
if you hold on real quick, hold
that additional $20 million.
Hold up. So if you're Bryce Underwood, right? This is just, like I said, this is just me thinking. If you're Bryce Underwood, right, you paid him $10 million. So now, hypothetically, you have some portal issues, like you can't bring in certain people or whatever, like you don't have the money to do the revenue sharing in a way that you would like to. Then could that potentially lead to him leaving Michigan at some point? Because like, where's the team around me? And then, like I said, you start hurting the basketball program because now you're cutting the money. You're getting money in because you're Michigan, but some of that other money was going to flow somewhere.
But it's extra money.
Yeah. Ohio State got that extra money that you don't got. Penn State got that extra money that you don't got.
True. But what is their starting bank account? Like, if you think about, like, famously, they talked about USC has like a couple of $1 billion in their endowment because everyone donates. Same thing with Harvard, because Harvard had the whole political thing where they were going to hold the federal funds. They were like, yo, we have $52 billion in our account. So if you don't give us $2.5 more billion, we still have $52.5 billion. Michigan's like, okay, cool. You won't give us $20 million. We gave one kid
it's more
10.
Than that. It's more than that.
Whatever that number is, they gave one teenager $10 million. So even if the bowl money is $30 million, they allocated 33% of that to one guy. So that means you have to have a plethora of funds available if you're willing to give one kid who played high school football in your state $10 million to come to your school based off of film. No college, he has no college film. There's no score of him beating a college team, and you gave him $10 million. Then whatever money the NCAA was going to give them for going to whatever bowl game or whatever postseason game they were going to is drops in the bucket, drops in the ocean. If you're willing to give one player $10 million, and that's the thing, that's why it wasn't a real punishment. Unless you say, hey, you guys can only play with 65 scholarship players, that's a real punishment. Yeah. SMU, that's a real punishment. USC giving their stuff back, that's a real punishment. Firing coaches, losing scholarships, paying money, that's a real thing. Being
their scholarship
banned for
budget
2 years.
affected. Their scholarship budget is affected in this punishment.
Oh, I get it.
For 2 years.
But the budget is still overflowing. Like, they weren't skimping, expecting this extra money to come in.
So you're just paying 5 stars to walk on?
They're gonna pay them. They're gonna pay them because they're Michigan. The money comes from somewhere.
Think about the most. We'll see.
They can call Tom Brady, like, listen, Tom, we need $5 million donation for this quarterback, and he got cool. I'll write that off. Let me call my guy. Yeah, Charles Woodson, you want to see us succeed? We need to get this corner out of California. Can you go talk to him? Write him a check for $2.5 million? No problem. Got you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michigan will probably do some shit just to fight the system, if you will. But I don't know. How that's going to work, because like I said,
they'll use as a rallying cry as everyone is us versus everybody, and they'll be fine, and they'll finish right in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten.
We'll keep an eye on it, but I think we'll keep an eye on it, but I think it'll have a greater effect than you're leading on with.
I don't think the money. If the money is a thing that you're leaning on as a piece that's going to impact them the most, I just feel like they have more of it.
And that's why I feel that the punishment was too light.
That's what I'm saying. The punishment's not real.
So
the punishment is not real. It's very dust.
So we got the Big Ten preview going on tonight. So and of course I got a couple of storylines before we get to it. So of course, first and foremost, all eyes are on Happy Valley. Penn State, it's put up or shut up time. You're bringing back the quarterback. You got both running backs back. You got 3 receivers in the transfer portal that are upgrades over what you had last year. We know that you're going to be linebacker university. It's time to put it together. It's time to go to Columbus and put belt to ass. That's first and foremost. But before you even get to Columbus, you better win on September 27th when Oregon comes in. That's the whiteout game, by the way. So then, Indiana, Act 2, right? Last year, best season in Indiana history. Coach Sig Nasty, the AP Coach of the Year. He went out and got a better quarterback this year. I want to see it. Said I got Indiana still, making some noise this year. Illinois. This is only last year was their fifth 10-win season in school history. It was the first since 2001. When Illinois gets ranked, they don't do well the next year. They haven't been ranked at the end of the season in back-to-back seasons since that 2001 time frame that I just brought up. In Nebraska and USC restore order. Blue bloods of the highest order that have fallen on hard times. Nebraska made their first bowl last year in 8 years. USC, they were talking about, is Lincoln Riley on the hot seat? I don't think he is because USC's got that Mike Norvell problem. Said that buyout too big. I know it's money, but we talking $60 million or so. And then finally, what's next for the champs? You know what I'm saying? So as we transition now, Mr. Logical, let me ask you a question.
Let's hear it.
If Ohio State goes 8-4 this year, is Ryan Day on the hot seat going into next year?
So we talked about this earlier. Right now, Ryan Day's record is 70-13 as a head coach at Ohio State.
Or go ahead, 70, I'll look it up.
70-10.
70-10. Yeah.
70-10.
Okay.
So that means at the end of this year, his record will be 78-14, and he could get fired off a national championship. I don't think they'll do it. I think what the NIL has done and what the transfer portal has done is allowed these schools who are essentially like the big stacks at a poker table to just keep playing. Like, don't worry about it. You lost that hand. Your stack is bigger than everybody else at this table, aside from one or two people who should be your competition every year. And I think they're just like, you know what? Who are we going to replace Ryan Day with that is going to duplicate 78-14?
Brian Hartline.
You can hope,
but
I don't see. I know, like, he does that face he had after the loss to Michigan last year, that bewildered look he had standing on the goal line. I don't know what he was looking at. I know it was a lot of chaos going on, but he wasn't reacting to the chaos. He just was standing. He had like this look like, is this my last day here? He had that look on his face. So luckily he turned it around.
So my thought is, you won the national title. Awesome. Ohio State fans still wasn't happy about the 2 losses, especially who the one was to. So let's walk this out for a quick second. Like, let's say Texas comes up there and puts a 31-14 or something like that on them, beats them down like they did Michigan last year. You go on your little winning streak or whatever the case may be. Penn State beats you. Ends the streak. Go lose to Michigan again. Even though it's in the big house, go lose to Michigan again. 9-3, no playoff. I think next year starts a little. I'm not saying they would actually fire him, but I just think the talks would ramp up again.
9-3, lost to number 1 team in the country.
Uh-huh.
If Penn State beats them, I imagine that they're playing at a high level. They would probably still be top 5.
But they're beating you at both of those losses are at the Horseshoe.
Or at home. Yeah. But it's going to be a number 1. I'm not saying I agree with it, but this is the rationale come the committee time. You had a loss to the number 1 team in America. You're working in a new quarterback. You lost a lot of guys to the draft. You're working with pretty much a whole new team. This isn't the national championship team playing against Texas. So that'll be the justification for that loss. Archman is a Heisman Trophy candidate, blah, blah, blah. Penn State, Drew Aller, could be a number 1 pick in the draft. Penn State's top 3, and then you lose your rivalry game. I think 9-3, the end of the year, 12 teams are basically voting. You could bank on 6 teams between the Big Ten and the SEC at a minimum out of the 12. You could probably book it for that. So if no one pulls away in the Big Ten, I can see them letting Ohio State still back in. But I just feel like they have always led the Big Ten in recruiting. I remember a few years back, there was 25 stars in the Big Ten. Ohio State had 14 of them. I think Michigan had 2, and then the other 4 were like spread out between one of the other random schools. They always just lead that conference. They just got to put it together.
Yeah.
They just got to have those drives where you say, you know what, 4 is down there wide open somewhere, throw it to them, and you'll win these games.
So tomorrow is the word on the street. We should find out who Ohio State's starting quarterback is going to be for that Texas game. Either Julian Sand, who was the number 2 quarterback in his class behind DJ Lagway, or Lincoln Keenholz, so we'll see tomorrow. But anyway, we were going to talk about this in a tier style way, because the Big Ten is a huge conference.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put the schedule up here on the screen. We're going to talk. We're going to let the conversation flow, so let's do this. So let's start off with, first of all, let's do this on the front side now. Who do you have winning the Big Ten? Like, who do you have in the conference championship game?
Penn State, I think, just like you said, the upgraded wide receiver, Drew Aller has to prove or show or do something, because like the wide receiver stats, you talked about it a lot going into the national champ, the Big Ten championship games. Porous. He needs to throw the ball down the field. Franklin needs to let it go. Like, listen, you're in the proverbial catbird seat. You're up. You probably have the most returning starters in the most important positions. You have an advantage, even though Ohio State might be ranked high. These guys all ranked in the same area. Texas, granted Texas in the Big O and SEC. You're in a position to win games. You just got to go out there and put it on the field, but you got to air it out. You can't be shy. I know Singleton is going to be a great back, but it's like you got to air it out. You got to let your quarterback, who potentially could be one of the top 1 or 2 quarterbacks, Arch Manning maybe not come out. He might be the number 1 quarterback. You got to let him air it out. And trust the fact that you have talent here. And we're going to beat these teams. We're going to put them away early. That way I'm not out here, struggling at the end of the games to beat USC like they were last year.
Yeah, so for me, and I was big on this last year, Andrew Kolnicki, their offensive coordinator, this is year 2 of his system with the experienced players coming back. So I don't see much in Penn State's way. We'll get back to that statement in a second. But then what did Penn State do? They took Ohio State's defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles. They said, you ain't terrorizing us no more. You're terrorizing them. So real quick, Mr. Logical, do you know who Ohio State's defensive coordinator is now?
I'm always bad at these questions.
It's the one and only Matt Patricia.
You told me that before. Yeah, that's pathetic.
Yeah, the one and only Matt Patricia. Brian Hartline is taking over at OC because Chip Kelly went to the Raiders. So you got 2 new coordinators. So that's part of the reason, I don't like both coordinators leaving. So that's part of the reason I'm a little lower on Ohio State.
And then Patricia hasn't really had a great track record of being, like I said, the same thing with Belichick. Granted, he's cut off the Belichick tree. If he could get these guys playing with their talent mixed with like some new NFL schemes that most college quarterbacks can't navigate, then I just don't trust him as a coach. There's no evidence to say that he knows what he's actually doing.
I want you to repeat something that you told me last night when I was talking about Penn State's receivers, and you said, well, I don't know about Drew Aller. And then you said,
I don't, but it's like,
no, I want you to say what you said.
If without the tight end, he should be better. He should be better at throwing the ball down the field.
You don't remember. That's not the one. We were talking about it, and I was talking about, like, hey, he's going to be a high NFL draft pick, all this and all that. And you said, you know what? If he couldn't get the ball to the receivers, maybe he's not that dude.
But if you think about all the change at the top, like we talk about it in tiers. So if we just go 1, 2, and 3 is 18 teams. I think 6 in tier 1 is too much. I'm gonna keep it at 3. Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon. That's your tier 1.
That's your tier 1. That ain't my tier 1.
That's the proverbial tier 1. I think the return of Drew Aller, like you said, the transfer portal, getting them better wide receivers, year 2 in the system, it should translate. If he can't get it done, then as an NFL scout, you got to look at that like, okay, if this guy can't get it done. But I just feel like he's in a position to get it done more than the other guys.
My tier 1 is Penn State, Oregon, Indiana. And, and I was this close. I was that close to putting Washington in my tier 1. So there goes my dark.
Do you have Ohio State outside of your? You have them tier 2.
I got Ohio State tier 2. Yes, you know what I mean, because I just feel like. So this is the thing, right? When you talk about programs like Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson, they reload more than they rebuild. You know what I'm saying? But every now and again, like it catches up with you, because they got losses all over the place. It's not like they just lost a linebacker, their star linebacker, and we're like, what's the defense going to do? They lost the quarterback. They lost both running backs, Judkins and Henderson. They still got those receivers now. They got Jeremiah Smith. They got Carnell Tate. They got Caleb Downs, the best defender in the country on defense. But now, where's the offensive line depth? They lost JTT off the defensive line. They lost Denzel Burke in the secondary. So their losses are just all over the place. That's a lot to have to reload with.
We felt like the masses, the huddled masses, that felt like Ryan Day is an inept coach. And we just said his record is 70-10. He's lost players to the draft before. He loses a quarterback to the draft probably every year, or another 2 or 3 to the transfer portal. They have spare 4 and 5 stars. That get a lot of reps because they played a lot of big games last year.
What gets in Ryan Day's way? You know what gets in his way? His brain.
Yeah.
He gets too caught up in trying to prove how tough Ohio State is. Remember that game 2 years ago at Notre Dame at South Bend, and they won because Notre Dame had 10 defenders on the field? Yeah, they should have blown Notre Dame off that field. But
this is how Ohio State plays football. Yeah, I get
Where's
that.
Lou Holtz right now? You know what I mean? And then last year, the game against Michigan, they were 22-point favorites going into that game. Michigan couldn't score. You know what the final score of that game was? It was 13-10.
10, yeah.
Because he was trying to prove I can out Michigan. So that's what gets in.
And then they went out there and put up 77 points in the first quarter on Oregon in the playoff. So
just like I predicted they would. And you know what I mean?
I didn't see that coming. Like the Trayvon Henderson
that's what I told you, because last year
that camera at ground level, he was so fast, and the whole time he was running, I was thinking to myself, why didn't they just do that against Michigan? The whole time against Oregon when I was watching the game.
Yeah, last year, that's what I did. I picked Oregon in the regular season matchup. I picked Ohio State in the playoff matchup. But anyway, so the other thing, Michigan, they're getting a lot of love from the media. You know what I'm saying? They're ranked for some strange reason. I guess you got to build the hype for this new quarterback, Bryce Underwood, if he's the starter, because you got Mikey Keene in from Fresno State, formerly UCF as well. So Michigan sits at number 14 right now. The one thing I will say about Michigan, though, they ended the season how you end the season. They beat Ohio State and Alabama back-to-back, with a total combined score of 32-23. So
that's probably why they're ranked like that. Just riding the momentum of the previous year. And
all those dudes, but Mason Graham's gone, Kenneth Grant's gone, Will Johnson is gone. Kalel Mullins is gone. Donovan Edwards is gone. So, it's the same concept, but Michigan doesn't recruit to the clip that Ohio State does. Like, Michigan is more, we have athletes, but they're Michigan men. They're not necessarily the most athletic always. They're not necessarily the strongest. They just buy into our system. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
they don't get a lot of Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smiths and Baron Brown like Speaks or guys. They just get really, really, really good football players who want to come to Michigan. It is a gritty 3 yards in the cloud of dust kind of football environment, offensively and defensively. So that's the kind of players they recruit. They don't get a lot of guys who want to catch bubble screens and
Right. That's why I'm
Reggie
trying to
Bushes and
figure
stuff
out
like
who
that.
Bryce Underwood's going to throw the ball to this year.
Somebody got to get open underneath on this drag route slant. They're going to keep a good. They're keeping 2 or 3 good tight ends. They're going to come out in the 3 tight end set, and it's going to be play action, bootlegs, tight ends in the flat. They'll get, and then he's 6'5", probably 220. They'll get him on the edge, and now he has to match up with some corner who's, call it 5'10", 185. That might be a battle he can win every once in a while.
So can I be a hypocrite real quick?
Let's go ahead. Shows all about mistakes.
So, I put Oregon, both of us put Oregon in our tier 1.
Correct.
I think Oregon is as likely to go 8-4 as they are 11-1. Because when I'm looking at the schedule here, I'm looking at September 27th, the whiteout game at Penn State. I'm looking at that game.
4, Penn State, so week 5.
Yeah, so Dante Moore will have some starts under his belt by then, in the new system. He got to sit behind Dylan Gabriel last year, so you would like to think that some of that rubbed off on him, if you will, the precision of running that offense. But their best receiver, Evan Stewart, broke his patella, out for the season. But they still got players that I like. So it's not like I'm giving up. Like freshman, this is a freshman now, DeCorian Moore. Remember that name. He was the number 4 prospect this year. Remember that name. I want to see if Malik Benson can catch, because he couldn't catch DJ Uyangale's balls last year. Pause. Said, when he came to Florida State, because Florida State said, hey, there's a wide receiver from Alabama. We can go get him. Guess what? He didn't play at Alabama, and there was a reason for it. But anyway, continuing down Oregon's schedule, so I'm looking at week 11. I don't know who, but the Hawkeyes going to get somebody. They going to get somebody. They got Penn State coming in. They got Oregon coming in. They got Indiana coming in. They going to get somebody.
So you saying you're thinking likely they could go 10-2 or 8-4? Like that's your range? What was your range again? What was the high end?
Well, I was saying they could go 11-1. Like they could easily
11-1.
They could easily lose to Penn State and win out. I could honestly see that. But I'm looking at that last game of the season. I can't have a dark horse if I don't pick them to beat anybody. So I got the Washington Huskies and Jed Fish.
Yeah, see, I think that's a lot of feelings in that selection. I like it though. There's no facts or feeling over here.
No,
I think Oregon's offense has always been predicated on a quarterback that can get the ball out quick, fast, spread, a 5'11" to 6 foot tall wide receiver, weighs about 192 pounds, that runs a 4.29. That guy's always in Oregon. And when in doubt, you could be at the 5-yard line, you could be at the 50. The way Oregon has played football is that let's get the ball in the hands of that guy 4 times a game and see if we can make magic happen. And it normally does. It normally, like a bubble screen, a guy like that, young guy, we saw what he was doing down in Texas. In high school, probably some of the top high school football in the country, just running past people. Him in open space, linebacker trying to catch him. And I think that's what Oregon's always been able to do. So no matter if the game is back and forth, I can rely on these types of plays because that is what they've always done. That's what the fans expect. That's what guys who come there expect to do. That's why they end up with a lot of guys who don't always really translate to the NFL because the way they play at Oregon. But it's small, fast, quick, in and out of cuts. Let's get on the ball. Let's go quick. And I think that overwhelms some of the more physically statured Big Ten teams, like we talk about Michigan. Michigan's not going to be able to go up and down the field in 3 or 4 plays the way Oregon's going to be able to do it. Maybe even Penn State might not be able to do that. They do have a lot of speed, but that's not how their offense is built.
Well, I'm just letting you know right now, all things created equal, all kinds of health. I'm taking Washington over Oregon right now. You know what I'm saying? They got a guy that goes by the name of Damon Williams. I call him Weapon X. And this year he's going to turn into Wolverine or Deadpool, depending on which universe you like better. You know what I'm saying? We got Coach Jed Fish up in here. You know, he took over Kevin Sumlin's Arizona teams. He went from 1-11 to 5-7 to 10-3. So there's going to be an improvement this year. You know, Denzel Boston, my favorite wide receiver in college football, that's not Antonio Williams. You know, I think he's going to be a great NFL receiver. So the weapons are there along with the running back, Jonah Coleman. So now, you know, it's just the defensive side of the ball. You know, can you take a step forward? Now, I'm not picking Washington to go to the Big Ten championship game or anything like that, but it wouldn't surprise me. But what about Lincoln Riley? You know, we were just talking about USC. You know, is he on the hot seat, all that stuff. So, you know, last year their defense did improve under DeAnthony Lynn, their defensive coordinator that they brought over from rival UCLA. How about that? You know,
it's crazy what money can do, right?
Yeah, USC is a sleeper in the conference this year, you know, but I think the media has caught on to that, and it might be one of those things where they're not going to be able, they're USC too. They're not going to sneak up on you like Indiana was able to do. You know what I mean? People are going to get up.
I think people just didn't believe in Indiana. I think when you saw Indiana's win total -0, people just didn't believe either one of those
numbers. They were
numbers.
looking at the name of the team and not the actual team.
But I think a 3-0 USC, a 4-0 USC is going to get their next opponent's best shot.
Right.
But with USC, for them to be the Caleb Williams years should have been more successful, but the defense was just poor. It was basically just an open gate, you know, everyone just run through. Lincoln Riley has success in Oklahoma, but I think Oklahoma, once again, its location. You can recruit Oklahoma, Texas, and anywhere in that down south region. You could get outstanding players that can just make your scheme even better. He should be able to do that in California. I don't know why he hasn't been able to, recruit a top-tier defense. You got everything you need. You have, what's the argument? It's like the top high school football, 1, 2, and 3 interchangeable between Florida, Texas, California. I know Georgia throws their hat in the ring a lot of times in that argument. But for the most part, you got a top 5 high school program throughout your state.
Right.
You should be able to recruit better. And I think that's the problem. I think the expectations for USC, no matter what their coaching situation is or their player situation is, the expectations that they are the Pete Carroll, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Lindale White kind of USC. And when they don't live up to that early on in the year, people just kind of forget about them. They're on the West Coast, and we see their games whenever they come on TV.
So Lincoln Riley started off 11-1, you know, with Caleb Williams, of course. You know, he's been 15-13 since. You know, they lost Zachariah Branch to Georgia, you know, which I think is a big loss. Even though he wasn't their leading receiver last year, he was probably their most dangerous receiver. You know,
should have been because he's the most dangerous guy, but
right.
You got to employ him. He should have gone to Oregon personally.
You know,
he would have been a killer in Oregon.
So you got Jaden Maeva, you know, still taking, you know, he took over for Miller Moss last year. He's going to continue this year. They do have Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane back at wide receiver. So good to go. We were just talking about their defense improvement. They got a lot of defensive line depth this year. Offensive line, not so much. Yesterday or sometime this week, they lost their nickel back, Prophet Brown, out for the season. So next year might be the actual year where I'm looking at USC as go to the Big Ten championship game. But when I look at their schedule, the first thing that jumps out to me is week 5 against the Fighting Illini, because the Fighting Illini returned the most starters of any team in the country. You know, they went 10-3 last year, but let me warn you, Illini fans, beating South Carolina, even though they were good last year, does not make you a great team. You know, so they lost their top 2 receivers One of them I really love, Zachary Franklin. Shout out to UTSA. And Pat Bryant. They didn't really run the ball that well last year. And when you look at their schedule last year, for example, they lost 3 games. They went 9-3, but they didn't get any playoff talk like Ole Miss and Alabama got. But 2 of those 3 losses that they had were to at Oregon and at Penn State. You know what I mean? And then they lost 1 to Minnesota. So watch out for Illinois this year just based off of production. But with all the starters, they have that continuity that you look for. But they might have shot their load last year, if you will.
Pause.
Yeah. So then you got the sisters. Saying Iowa and Minnesota, right? They build their teams the same way. They have 2 great coaches that don't get enough credit for what they do, making more with less. And then when you look at their schedules this year, you can see why, because Iowa's got Penn State and Oregon coming in. Meanwhile, Minnesota goes to Ohio State and Oregon. So, so now you're just on different ends of the home away situation. But I think those are 2 teams that look a lot alike. Iowa is bringing in South Dakota State quarterback Mark Grakowski. So I'm interested to see how that goes because, the number one question is always, how many points is Iowa going to score? So, Phil Parker has to be the most frustrated coordinator in this country.
The Iowa, Minnesota, a lot of these Big Ten schools, like I said, if I want to draft a guard or a tackle or a tight end, I'm looking here. Yes, the SEC has dynamic tight ends. A lot of them are great blockers, whereas some of these tight ends in the Big Ten used to be left tackles in high school and right tackles in high school. So they're always a very brute force kind of team. And I'm not sure if college quarterbacks, especially in this day and age of recruiting, where the big numbers get you on TV and the TV time gets you viewed by scouts and then gets you on ESPN and gets you on Fox for interviews and so forth and so on. I'm not sure a lot of guys really want to go to these schools to just throw 10-yard outs to tight ends and comebacks and curls to tight ends. They want wide receivers that go deep. Well, the wide receivers don't want to go because there's a bunch of tight ends and they run the ball a lot. Mm-hmm. So it's a double-edged sword. You want to control the clock. You want to control a lot of scrimmage. That's essentially how you can win football games. But at some point, you're going to have to stretch the field. And we talked about a couple of years ago, Iowa had the minimum. There was
the count. They had to score 325 points.
325. It's like, if that is what your floor is going into the season, you need to really evaluate who you're hiring in these positions. I think they'll do fine, but there's going to be a lot of games where your field goal kickers have to kick a 56-yard field goal for you to win, 20-17.
And Kirk Ferentz, retire after this year, please. So looking at Iowa's schedule, they're in trouble, man. They're good enough, I think, to get 8 wins, but it ain't guaranteed by any means. You got week 2. You're going over for the Cyhawk over in Ames. Then you got Indiana coming in a couple of weeks later. You get Wisconsin off the bye. Wisconsin will probably be beat up by then. More on that later. Then you get Penn State and Minnesota, your rivalry game for Floyd or Rosedale, the best trophy in sports. Then you get Oregon coming in. You go to USC the week after that. Close with Nebraska. So, which brings me to, real quick, before I get to Nebraska, I wanted to call out a few people on Minnesota that I like, So you got, so they got a true freshman that's going to start at quarterback this year, Drake Lindsay. So, we'll see how that goes. PJ Fleck, great coach, 6 bowls, 3 seasons, at least 9 wins at Minnesota. 4 top 15 defenses in his time. I mentioned the other night that the defensive coordinator went down to Miami, Corey Heatherman. But, as I look at this, they got a running back in from Marshall that averaged 8.3 yards per carry last year, AJ Turner.
Christ.
They got Coy Parrish. Hopefully I said it right. But he might be this year's Travis Hunter. He's a safety that they might play at receiver this year. You got Lemeki Brockington, who I like at wide receiver. And I said all that just to get to Mr. Logical. Minnesota's on upset alert week 1 against Buffalo. So there you go. But yeah, so Nebraska, the blue blood, right? The other blue blood that we're trying to see, can they restore their glory? I got a crazy question, Mr. Logical. Looking at this schedule for Nebraska, could they start 8-0?
Cincinnati, what's that A? Is that
Akron?
Akron.
Houston, Christian. Now you got the tough one. But it's at home.
It's at home. Michigan.
You get your bye week against Sparty, and then you come back against Sparty.
It depends if they're going to try to if they're going to keep using their quarterback to cosplay Patrick Mahomes, then that week 4 game could be tough. He could be throwing 35, 40 passes with the defensive front that Michigan, they're going to come with that. At a minimum, the front 7 is going to be prepared to battle at the line of scrimmage. So, like I said, if you want Dylan Raiola out there to continue to cosplay Patrick Mahomes and he's throwing the ball up for grabs, then that could be a problem. I mean, I've never been a big I know Matt Rule is a guy that people like. I know people like him. I think he's a good coach. I don't see him as a big game coach. I don't see him as a gamer. I see him as just a guy that it's good to have in your organization. Like Brad Stevens for the Celtics. On the floor, the X's and O's, maybe, but like upstairs in the booth, making things happen, that makes sense up in the office. Matt Rule feels like one of those guys to me where it's
year
like
3, Matt
on the
Rule
field,
real.
They say that all the time. But I thought it was year 2.
Go look at what he did at
year 2.
Go look at what he did at
Baylor,
year 3. Go look at what he did at Baylor in year 3.
What did he do with the Carolina Panthers?
I don't think he got 3 years in Carolina.
Exactly, because I think
said
the
year 3.
realization
I didn't say year 2, year 3.
Yeah, I think the realization is that year 3 magic has worn off. Because that was the narrative going into when he got hired in the NFL and he got that ridiculous contract. Like I said, I just think he's a likable guy.
I don't know.
I'm not
looking at this. I got him starting 7-1 at worst before that USC game. The problem is once you get to that USC game, it gets wild. They're gonna probably lose the USC. You got a road game at Happy Valley near the end of the season, and then you play Iowa back to back. So they could start 7-1 and finish 8-4. That's very possible. But even then, that's still the best season Nebraska has had since 2016. So,
and that's one of those things. I think that kind of season where they end up 7-5 is going to be the best season, and then people are going to stamp the year 3 Matt Rule on it. And it's like, all right, cool.
All right, well, instead of year 3 Matt Rule, let's go year 2 Raiola. And they got Dana Holgorsen taking over the play calling now. He took over late at the end last year, but now he's officially in there. So, we'll see how that goes. As we're looking at this, Michigan State, this is another team that I feel like could make somewhat of a run if they had a better schedule. Not a run as far as making it to the title game, but just that 8 wins coming off of 4 or 5 wins, seeing that improvement. Because I really like Aiden Childs, but he's got to hold on to the ball. 13 touchdowns, 11 picks. He had 5 fumbles and lost 3 of those. So once you clean that up, you cooking with gas. On defense, they got a couple of guys, Nakai Martinez and Jalen Thompson. One's a DB. The first one's a DB. Second one on the D-line. Get Nick Marsh involved in the receiving game. I think Michigan State can get somebody, and looking at their schedule, they could be 3-0 going into that USC game. Western Michigan, Boston College, and Youngstown State. They could be 3-0 headed into that USC game, and it's on the road. So then we'll see what you're made of. You know what I mean? If you're worth anything, you'll at least be competitive.
3 home games to get you ready for a big game makes sense. I mean, I like their chances. It's just that they haven't had like the recent success that they could rely on and lean on. They've had a lot of, it's a lot of issues going on in Michigan State, with a lot of different
Mel Tucker,
things, a lot of different things going on. Yeah, a lot of different things going on from a legal standpoint that's probably taking a lot of attention away from recruiting. or deter people from wanting to go there. Like, okay, you guys are in the midst of some shit. Let you get your relationship squared out, squared away, and then we'll come start playing football there. So, a couple of bad losses, and like, okay, you're thinking 3-0. You go into that USC game 1-2, just because college football is college football, and crazy things happen.
I just came up with a new nickname
for
Mel Tucker, Coach 1900. Your guys up in your neck of the woods, the Scarlet Knights.
Let's go.
Last year was such a weird year. Usually Rutgers is Iowa East. They'll hold you to 17, but they can't score anything. Last year, they actually put up a little bit of points. They couldn't stop anybody. And I think that's going to continue this year. They brought in transfer quarterback from Minnesota last year, Ethan Kaliakmanis.
Yep.
And
hell of a name right there.
Yeah, he's back. They also got 4 dudes from the offensive line back this year. And this is what you'll love, Mr. Logical. At the receiver position, they got 6'3" Ian Strong and 6'6" KJ Duff.
Throw it up.
Let's see some of them fade routes.
Throw it up.
You know what I'm saying? Throw it up.
He's down there somewhere. If he's not triple covered, throw it up. I don't care. Like,
but I have to admit to you though, I'm sick of waiting on Rutgers. You know what I'm saying? I keep thinking like, okay, they're gonna be good this year, and then they fade. This year ain't the year. Look at that schedule. This ain't the year. They got Iowa coming in week 4. They go to Washington, so you got the trip on top of playing a good team. You got Illinois. You go to Ohio State and close with Penn State back-to-back. So, I don't know, man. If they could get 7-5, I think that's a win.
Rutgers should – I don't know if they recruit Jersey well.
They don't. If they recruited Jersey well, they'd be 9-3 every year.
Yeah. Was where Rutgers is situated, a lot of the prep schools are north of that. So it's like it's easy to get to. A couple prep schools south, like Camden Catholic's down here. There's another one in Lawrence, which is south of like Lawrence Prep, which is south of New Brunswick. But they should be recruiting so many Saint this, Saint John that, Saint Vianney this, Saint that, Saint this, Saint that, all in that general area. All getting recruited by the Big Ten players. You'll see it in the introductions when you go to these players. A lot of them are from Jersey. Penn State gets a lot of players from Jersey. So it's like, if they could keep some of these kids in state, they'll be all right. The stadium isn't attractive, so that's one thing. I can't imagine the facilities are that much better.
Yeah.
So it's just if you're being recruited by Penn State and Rutgers, because
how far is Rutgers from East Rutherford?
Like 40 minutes with traffic.
Think, play a game there every so often.
It's definitely close enough to play a game, but Rutgers is like a family kind of school. It's in the middle of this town. A lot of people from Jersey go to Rutgers. There's a Rutgers campus down here south in Camden. There's another one way north in Newark. There's the main one in New Brunswick. So Rutgers is just interwoven into so many different people's families. So a lot of people end up at Rutgers because of that. But they should be able to do better recruiting. But yes, it's gonna be a tough stretch because in this day, if you don't have like the quarterback, even with the transfer portal and college football, you're. And I'm just
tired of these celebrities. I used to always talk about, hey, LeBron, why you ain't funneling that money into Akron? Where you at, Redman? Where you at, Joe Budden? I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying? Yes, Jersey in the house. What up, Ransom? You know what I'm saying? But,
they're more likely to support like a high school prep program because it's more successful.
Push them to Rutgers at least, But Purdue, finished with 1 win last year over Indiana State. So
double and give them 2.
No, I'm giving them 4 or 5. Saying I like head coach Barry Odom. He's replacing Ryan Walters, who is now the defensive coordinator at Washington. He wasn't ready to be a head coach, and it showed. Remember that 66-0 they lost to Notre Dame last year. So this year, they got Barry Odom in from UNLV. Sig Nasty style. He's bringing a lot of his UNLV dudes with him. You know what I mean? The only problem is they don't have a quarterback per se. Ryan Brown was the starter last year. He transferred to go play for Belichick, and then he came back once they got Gio Lopez. Then, they brought in Malachi Singleton from Arkansas, and you're like, hold up, Malachi Singleton, he played for Arkansas? Who's that? He's the guy that led the winning drive when they upset Tennessee last year, when Taylor Green got hurt. So he's got some moxie, if you will. But, I'm looking at this. They open with Ball State. They got the Salukis the week after that. You got your 2 losses, USC, Notre Dame. Come off your bye. You get Illinois at home. You almost beat them last year. Minnesota's a toss-up. You should beat Northwestern. Rutgers a toss-up. You ain't getting neither one of those next 3, or actually you lose out after that. So
3-9,
4-8. I'll go 4-8. I'm gonna give them a surprise year. We got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. The first trade in college football history. The Tennessee Volunteers get Joey Aguilar. UCLA gets Nico. What does it look like, Mr. Logical? Can Nico revive Troy Aikman University?
I liked him at Tennessee. I thought he was a good player. I just thought that he played his hand wrong in the negotiations, like how it came out publicly. But I think being back home in California was probably more comfortable. The schedule isn't crazy. I mean, their Big Ten schedule is pretty solid, but I think you saw your week 1 game against Utah. I mean, that's a loss. Unfortunately. I think UNLV and looks like New Mexico, like the Lobos.
Yeah.
2-1 going into your bye. Northwestern 3-1.
Yep.
Penn State's probably lost. But yeah, Michigan State, Maryland. I'm not as big on Indiana as you are because I just felt like the way they played in the latter part of the season against the big name matchups, I feel like that's going to be more. I think they're probably more in the 7-5, 8-4 kind of season.
Shout out to D'Angelo Pons, my favorite DB in the country at Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, I think UCLA is going to have an above average year, 7-5, maybe squeeze out 8-4. That final stretch, like I said, depends on Nebraska. You say you believe in the Matt Rule year 3 rule. So Nebraska, Ohio State, Washington, and USC to finish out the year. They got to get their wins in that first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first 8, they can't be worse than 6-2 going in that final stretch.
I got them going 5-7. Unless Nico really takes a leap, because they're starting 17 new players this year. Off a team that was pretty bad last year. So
but
I guess
that's standard for most college football teams. Or you're starting double-digit players.
But you also have a head coach that, he came on last year. The one thing I will give Deshaun Foster is that UCLA does play hard for him. So he has the locker room.
He just wasn't good at the speech.
Yeah, he's an alum, so he's got the passion for the school. But I just think they need another year. They did finish 4-2 last year, their last couple of games of the year. So, we'll see. We'll see. They got one of those Cal running backs that jumped into the transfer portal I was talking about last week. So we'll see. And then you got Wisconsin. Ooh, look at that schedule and shudder. You know what I'm saying? So week 1, Maryland, okay, Miami of Ohio, okay, Middle Tennessee, Ohio. Okay. Then you go to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Then you play Maryland, so that's a win. You got Maryland's former quarterback, Billy Edwards, as well, coming in this year. You go to the big house, then you play Iowa and Ohio State back-to-back. They're at home, cool. But then after that, you got Oregon at Autzen after the Ohio State game. You get another bye. You get Washington and Indiana, Illinois, the triplets. You're going to lose all 3 of those. So I think Wisconsin's best-case scenario is 6-6, which might get my guy, Luke Fickell, fired. He was the first coach to get a G5 to the playoffs, the 14 playoff. Took Cincinnati there. He brought in Phil Longo as his offensive coordinator in year 1 and 2, who was Drake May's coordinator at North Carolina. You don't do that at Wisconsin. You just don't do that at Wisconsin. So he switched over. They got Jeff Grimes now. He comes over from Kansas. So I think they get back to Wisconsin football this year. They run the football, try to play sound defense. But Billy Edwards, I don't know, man. 19 touchdowns, 10 interceptions over 3 years at Maryland. I don't know, man. I'm going to just leave it at that. I don't know, man. You know what I'm saying? Then as we finish this up here,
definitely a tough schedule.
You know what I'm saying? We got a couple of teams here, you know what I'm saying, to wrap this all up. Let me make sure we didn't skip anybody before we wrap up with these last two bums real quick. I think we're good there. So Northwestern, David Bond, year 3, year 1, he came in, took over from Pat Fitzgerald, after the whole hazing, firing and all that. And, they went to a bowl game that year, beat a couple of good teams. Then last year it all fell apart, So this year they bring in former SMU quarterback Preston Stone, who has a 28 touchdown, 6 interception year on his resume. That was the year before last. They took SMU to the American title game, but he broke his leg in the last game of the season. So Kevin Jennings took over. He tried to start last year in that game against BYU, and it just wasn't happening. He probably wasn't ready from the injury yet. So Northwestern's got the quarterback, maybe, just going off of potential. But Mr. Logical, Tulane is going to beat Northwestern in week 1.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I'm putting that down. Then they get Oregon in week 3. Yeah, they get Oregon in week 3 at home. So I see 3 wins potentially on the schedule. Western Illinois in week 2, Louisiana Monroe after the UCLA game, and then maybe Minnesota, depending on how that freshman quarterback plays.
So it's looking real 2-10-ish.
Yes, it is. And, David Bond's probably going to be out on his ass after that. And then finally, my Maryland Terps, the old line state is in the house. But guess what? Maryland's probably going to win one Big Ten game this year. Starting true freshman Malik Washington at quarterback. Maryland, here you go, Mr. Logical. Since joining the Big Ten back in 2014.
Yeah, they don't have a great record. Let's hear
Maryland's Big Ten record is 28-65. You know what I'm saying? Mike Locksley.
How many coaches have you gone through?
There's at least 2. I know there was Randy Edsel who came in. He was former UConn coach. They got Mike Locksley now. I think there was a coach in between that got a year. So maybe 3 coaches. But Mike Locksley, as the great Aubrey Graham would say, we'll fold that up right now. You know what I'm saying? You're done here, Mike Locksley. As I look at this schedule, Ty Felton's in the NFL now. Their running back, Hemby, that I liked a lot, is over at Iowa now. So, lots of movement going on. But looking at this schedule, so you'll get the win against Florida Atlantic.
Maybe.
Before you pencil in Northern Illinois, remember they won at South Bend last year.
Yeah, last year. Yep.
Yeah. Now, granted, they should be rebuilding. They lost a lot of players. I love their coach, Thomas Haddock. He was talking about it the other day. Towson, you're going to beat up on another Maryland team right there that people haven't heard of. You know what I'm saying? Then you go to Camp Randall. L. You go play Washington. L. Nebraska. L. UCLA. L. Maybe a toss-up depending on how Nico looks and how they settle in, but I'm going to say L. You're going to play Indiana. L. Maybe Rutgers could be a toss-up if the defense really can't stop anybody. Yeah. Illinois. L. Michigan, L, and maybe Aiden Childs gives you the ball a few times. So at best, I got Maryland at 4-8. That's best case scenario. I could see a window of 1-11.
You got to give them
I give them
fighting chance in the first 3 weeks. The first 3 weeks.
Oh, I'm sorry. 2-10 because I forgot the Towson game. There you go. Okay. So 2-10.
They could be 3-0 after that. Depends on how Florida Atlantic's really built. Like if they, like I said, anytime I hear Florida and football, especially college football, I know they have talent. They have speed.
Okay.
They have freak athletes. I imagine I haven't looked at the Florida Atlantic roster. There's probably a couple of guys on their defensive line or some linebackers that are like 6'3", 240 that run like 4.40s or something like that. They probably have players like that just because it's Florida.
So I forgot that Towson game, so I'll update and say best case scenario 5-7. But you're starting your freshman quarterback first road game at Camp Randall. I don't care how bad Wisconsin is. Like going to Camp Randall is not an easy task.
Was it 90,000, 100,000 seats there too?
I think they're a little smaller than that, but still, but so as I look across this, and I realized that I never said what I was going to say earlier. So give me Penn State. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it, Mr. Logical. I'm going to do it. No guts, no glory.
Let's hear it.
Give me Penn State over USC. Fight on, Trojans.
USC in the Big Ten championship game.
Fight on, Trojans.
I mean, I guess you can't go chalk and be like Oregon State or Oregon and Penn State back-to-back years. But with college football, aside from like the flukiness of the Big 12 that ended up with the team that they had in it, and even the ACC, you still had Clemson, who was the better team preseason. Just had that, like Miami just had a nice little run. I mean, it's boring to say Penn State versus Ohio State. So,
there's a very real scenario where Penn State goes to Columbus, loses, and they get Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. That is a scenario that could play out. But I'm going with USC. No guts, no glory. When I look at their schedule,
I got Penn State over Oregon. I'm going with that.
All right. If they lose to Notre Dame, it doesn't hurt them in the Big Ten standings. You know what I mean? So for me, it's going to boil down to the Illinois and Nebraska games. Those two road games is what is going to boil down to me, because they get Iowa at home. In Oregon is a tough road game, so I'll pencil that in as an L. You know what I mean? So it's going to come down to the Nebraska and Illinois games, I think.
I like it. I mean, this is more interesting than, I believe, our ACC conversation that we had. I just feel like there's more hope for more teams in the Big Ten. Because I think what every team does well, they consistently do it. It's not like, they're implementing a new system. The way USC plays is how they play. They just need to shore up the defense. Oregon plays the way they play. They just need to just be able to. Can you replicate what you had last year with Dylan Gabriel?
That's why I want to see
Ohio State and Michigan. Yeah,
that's why I want to see Indiana, because last year they didn't play Illinois. They didn't play Oregon. They didn't play Penn State. So, so if anything, it's in their hands, right? They got their destiny in their hands. You get Oregon and Penn State. Granted, they're both on the road. But you know what I mean? But hey, split those two road games and you might have something going on. Illinois, I already mentioned the USC game is pivotal for them. Obviously, they get Ohio State in week 7. So Illini Buck, I believe, is the name of the trophy there. That game at Washington week 9 is going to go a long way, because after that game, you probably should win out. So, Washington, they're my dark horse. As I look at that, you start off with Ohio State, but it's at home. And it's early enough that if the quarterback is struggling a little bit, you give yourself a chance. It's still early enough. You get Maryland, Rutgers after that. You go to the big house. Bryce Underwood should be settled in by then, so that might be a tough one.
Yeah,
but if you get out of but if you get out of there, you know what I'm saying, you got Illinois at home and you got Oregon at home. So I know that it's conventional wisdom to say you're going to lose to Oregon. 2-5 say, fuck that. If you got them at home, protect your home turf. That's a rivalry game. One of the most bitter rivalries in the country that nobody knows is a rivalry because they play in the Pacific Northwest. But Washington and Oregon is a thing. You know what I'm saying? Go back to that Kenny Wheaton interception back in 93, running down the sideline in that classic jersey that Oregon should have never stopped wearing. I don't care about Nike. I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying? But that is our Big Ten preview, y'all. So, we got the Big 12 coming up next week. And just so y'all know, recording notice, next week will be Wednesday, not Tuesday. And then we got the SEC for you next Friday. So, signing off, he is the world famous, the world renowned, cool, calm, and collected.
Always.
Mr. Logic. Do not, I repeat, do not bring feelings to a backfight. And then, of course,
don't do
the unorthodox statistician coming to you live from the Alamo. 2-5. We love y'all. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things. Grab a liquid death. If you need one, I'll get you one. Love you, Grandma. Peace.